So, welcome again, Scouts, to the vicarage. This time we're in the vicarage kitchen, and that's because I'm going to show you what I think is one of the most exciting parts of photography, and it's something that not many of us do these days because we're so used to using digital cameras. But there are still quite a big group of people who do take photographs using film. And certainly at the moment, if you go to art college or university to study photography, you will have to learn how to what they call develop or wet process film and print. So though this is something you don't need to do for your photography badge, I thought you might just like to see the process of how you actually go about developing a film. And this is a 120 roll film that we're going to develop in a bit, and I'm going to show you that process. It is actually quite straightforward, and it's something that you can do at home. And certainly lots of photographers many years ago started developing their own films when they were sort of 10, 11, 12 years old. So you don't need to be an adult to do this, though you are using some chemicals and such like, so it's a good idea to at least have an adult supervise you in how to mix the chemicals and things like that if you do want to have a go at this. So let's just have a look at what you're going to need. Obviously, first of all, you need a film which you've taken pictures on to develop. The next thing you need is what is called a developing tank, and this is a Paterson developing tank. And the idea is you can put the film in here and it keeps it in complete darkness so that you can pour the chemicals in and develop the film. And inside this are these special reels. They're called universal reels because you can undo them like this and for different size films. So that's for 35mm film, and this wide open here, which is what we're going to use, is for 120 film. And what happens is you have to get this film onto this reel in the dark. So you either have to do it in pitch blackness at night or in a dark room, or you use a special thing called a changing bag or a dark bag, which I'll show you later. So once the film is on the reel, in the dark, the reel goes in the canister, the top goes on, and then you can take it either out of the dark room or out of the dark bag, because the film will be safe and light tight in there so you can process the film. The next thing you're going to need are some chemicals, and these chemicals you can buy online or from good photographic shops, and you need 3 chemicals to develop black and white film. First of all, you need a developer that actually develops the film, and if you remember in the first session I said that film has what's called silver in it, or silver halide crystals, and this chemical reacts with the crystals to bring the picture out on the film. So once you put your developer in for about 3 or 4 minutes, you pour it out. You then need to have what they call a stop bath, and this is a slightly alkaline chemical which stops the chemical process of the developer, and that only has to go in for about a minute. So that's the second stage. And then the third part is what we call fixer, and this in a sense turns those silver halide crystals into a fixed image on the negative, so it will be there permanently. And negatives can last for a long time. Photography has been going over 100 years now, and you can find very old negatives which were often done on glass plates, and you can still print them today and get an image from them. So that's your 3 chemicals. It's helpful to have some of these sorts of things. These are 3 measuring jugs, very useful because I can work out the amount of chemical I need for each development, and then it means I can keep them separately in the jugs that are ready to go. You're also going to need a thermometer. Now this is a special darkroom thermometer, and when you're processing black and white film, all the chemicals have to be at 20 degrees Celsius. So it's very important that you get the temperature right. Black and white is pretty forgiving. If the temperature isn't spot on, it doesn't matter so much, not like with colour. But if you want to get a good consistent result with black and white, you need to be able to make sure your temperature is correct. So a thermometer is important. The final thing you're going to need is a timer. This is actually my old-fashioned darkroom timer, which I think is quite cool. But you don't have to have one of these. You could use your stopwatch on your phone or a clock or anything like that, but you do need something to be able to keep time of each process. Finally, it's a good idea to develop film either in the bathroom or in the kitchen, because you are going to need some running water to help mix up the chemicals and to wash the film later on. And finally, you'll need a place to hang the film to dry where there's not lots of dust, because the last thing you want when your film is wet is dust sticking to it, because later on when you try and either scan in the images or print them up, it will cause all sorts of problems. But that's really all you need in order to develop black and white film. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set everything up, ready to develop the first roll of film, and I'm also going to show you how we load that particular film into a canister like this. So keep watching. So let's have a look at how we actually get this film onto this reel and into this canister. Now, as I said, when you do this process normally, you have to do it in absolute pitch blackness. Even the light from your watch, if you have glow in the dark numbers on your watch, can affect the film. So it has got to be absolutely pitch black if you're going to do it in a room at night. But one of the best ways and the easiest way of doing it is getting one of these things. It's called a darkroom bag or a changing bag. It looks a bit like a sort of a coat or jacket that's gone wrong. But what you've got is a zip here with a light seal, so you can put the things in there. And then what you do is you put your hand in here, like this. And all of that paraphernalia is in this bag. And that means that you can then take the film out and put it on the reel and put it in the canister in the dark. But I'm going to show you how this gets done in daylight so you can actually see the process. Let me just put this out of the way first. So what you've got to imagine is that dark bag that we had, I've now put all of this stuff inside that dark bag and I've sealed it up. So when I'm doing this, I can't actually see what I'm doing. I'm doing everything by touch and feel. Now, the first few times you try this, it is quite difficult. And when I first studied or trained as a photographer, we had to sort of practice this. And what you would have is a sort of an old roll of film that didn't have any pictures on. And that's what this roll of film is. The real black and white film that we're going to develop, I'm going to put in the canister later on. But I'm using this old film that doesn't have any images on it just to show you the process. So let's imagine my hands are in the dark bag. The first thing I've got to do is find this little tab, and I've got to open the film up. And I discard that, and then I slowly start to pull the film open. Now, this isn't the film, this is just paper, it's a paper backing. But as I pull, the film will start to appear. There it is, that's the film. And can you see? You can tell it's the film because of that colour there, but of course you can't see that when you're doing it because it's in the bag. So what I normally do is once I've pulled that first bit of paper out, I rip it like that. I also have some scissors in the bag just in case it won't rip. And then what I've got to do is take the reel here, and if you look very closely, at the top of the reel here there's two bits that stick out, and there's just in there's two little ball bearings. I have to find those in the dark with my fingers and feel for them. And then what I'm doing is I'm just holding the film like that, and I slide it under those two little points until I feel it go over the ball bearings like that. And once it's done like that, I can turn it round and then very slowly start to do this. And what happens is the film gets taken up onto the spool, hopefully. It's a bit fiddly, but there we go. And the film will slowly wind onto the spool. Okay? So remember again, we're doing this in complete darkness in the bag. You wouldn't do this in daylight because it would ruin the film. So you've got to keep going. Sometimes the film just pops out of those little things and you have to just manually get it back in. And there we are, we're nearly at the end of the film. And when I feel the end of the film in the bag, what I do is I just snip it off like that. I discard that bit because we don't need it. And then I just keep winding this film all the way onto the reel. As I say, it does take a bit of practice, but eventually you'll get the hang of it. So finally, what you end up with is your film is all on that reel like that. You find the centre post, you put that through, and then you pop it in the developing tank, and then you pop this on the top and you click it shut. Once it's shut like that, that film is in a light-proof container. No light can come into this film, but we can pour the chemicals in. Once that's been done, you can then unzip your dark bag, take the canister out, and then start the film processing with the chemicals. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to line up the chemicals and get them ready so that you can actually watch the developmental process. So what I've done is I've put those items in my changing bag, in my dark bag now, just to show you how this is actually done in the dark bag. So in here is that film canister, the container that the film will go in, all the bits for that, the spiral, the centre pillar, the film and a pair of scissors. But I'm going to take my watch off because, as I said, the illuminated numbers from a watch can affect a film. Okay, rolled my sleeves up, and this is a bit of a strange thing to do. So you sort of put your hands in here like this, and then the first thing I'm doing is I'm finding the spiral. I can feel that with my hands now. I've got the scissors there, and I've put the film inside the little tub so I know where it is. I'm just making sure I've got the spiral the correct way round for loading on the film, because if you get it back to front, that can create all sorts of stuff. So now I'm just finding that little tab on the film. I've undone that, and I'm just pulling the film out slowly until I start to feel the edge of the film, which I've got. Tearing off that bit of paper that we did before, and then I'm getting the reel, and I'm just with the tips of my fingers just feeling where I've got to slide that film in gently onto the reel. There I go, I think it's going on there now. Past the little ball bearings. It can be a bit stiff to begin with, there we go. And then all I'm doing now is I'm just slowly winding the film onto the reel. I can feel it going on, so it's slowly going onto the reel, nearly at the end now, and there we go. I've got to the end of the film, so I'm just gonna pull that off like so, wind the last little bit of film onto the reel. There we are. Then I'm putting the reel into the developing tank. I've got the lid, which is now going onto the developing tank, and there'll be a click, and that's it. All done. I can take my hands out of here now, and if I open this up and unzip it, if you can see, there is my developing tank with the film in, and that's all that's left in there. That was the paper backing of the film. That can go into recycling. My scissors are there. And that's it. So we're now good to go, and we're going to mix the chemicals up now and do the developing. So I've moved over to the sink area now because I'm going to need some water. I've got some fresh water here, which is just over 20 degrees that I'm going to mix in a moment with the developer. That's because the developer's cold, and when I add the developer to the water, the temperature then should come down to the correct temperature of 20 degrees. I've got my fixer and my stop bath. This is already pre-mixed, and you can use this stuff several times with the film. Each of these you can use about 10 times the film, but the developer you can only use once each time. And here at the back in my washing up tub, I've got some warm water which is about sort of 26, 27 degrees, and I'm just going to put the fixer and the stop bath in there to get up to temperature. Now, None of these chemicals are particularly harmful, but whenever you're mixing or dealing with chemicals, it is important that you wear the right stuff. So I've got this old lab coat. In fact, I've had this since I trained as a photographer. That's why you can see all the stains all over it. So I'm going to put that on. That just protects my clothes from the chemicals. And so I'll do that up. I'm going to put, I am wearing glasses, which is fine, but I'm going to put a pair of safety goggles on. You don't really want to splash this chemical in your eye. It wouldn't harm you greatly, but it's best avoided. And then a pair of marigolds, so you're not touching the chemicals. So I'm just going to put these on. And that just means I'm all safe now to mix up my developer. So I'm going to take one of these, and the solution that you use for developing film is quite important. Depending on how quick you want to develop the film, depending on the type of black and white film, you have to do different proportions of the chemical. Now for the film I use, which is Ilford, this is diluted 1 to 9. So with 600 ml of water, which will fill that tank, I basically need to put in 60 ml of neat developer. So I'm just going to measure that out now. That's the wonderful thing about photography. You do a bit of physics and a bit of chemistry and a bit of art all together. So that's my 60 ml of neat developer, which I pour in there. Put the lid back on the developer. I'm going to put that out of the way to keep it safe. And then, as I say, in here I've got my water. There's my thermometer. It's just above 21 degrees, which means that when I pour it in here up to the 600 ml mark, that will allow the temperature just to cool down a little bit. I'll just give it a stir. And there we go, that's just starting to come down now nearer to 20 degrees, which is the ideal temperature that we want for developing black and white film. But by the time I've sort of poured these others out into the containers here and moved back over to the kitchen table ready to develop the film, though I might actually do it here on this occasion, we'll all be ready to go. So we're all ready to go to develop our film now. The film is in the developing tank. I've got my 3 chemicals here, my developer, my stop bath and my fixer. They're all roughly about 20 degrees. I'm just going to check the temperature of the developer. There it is, bang on, right on 20 degrees, so that's perfect. And I've got my timer because each section is going to be timed. Now the first part, the developer is going to have to be in here for 4 minutes and 15 seconds, and every minute we're going to agitate it, which means that I'm going to do this to the canister. That makes sure that the chemical gets all round the film. So let's begin. I'm going to take my developer and hit the start button. Pour the developer into the tank, pop the lid on, squash it down nice and hard, and then I give it a tap. That just gets rid of any air bubbles, and then I'm going to agitate it 4 times. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Give it another tap, and then we just wait a minute. Now, what's happening in here is that the developer is reacting with the silver halide crystals that are in the film, and it's starting to bring them out. And the film is sort of, those halide crystals sit on a gel, and it's just beginning that chemical process now of transforming those halide crystals into an image. So we're nearly coming up to the first minute of the 4 minutes and 15 seconds it's going to take. So time to agitate again. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and give it a tap. So I'm going to fast forward this a little bit and we'll come back in just before we get to the stop bath. So we're just coming up onto the final minute of the 4 minutes and 15 seconds of the developer. When this comes up to 4 minutes, I'm going to start pouring the developer off. You can't use this again, we can't keep the developer again, so it gets poured down the sink. It's very, very dilute, and the instructions say it's fine to pour it away down the sink with some running water. So we're just coming up to the 4th minute. I'm just going to give it a final agitation. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Give it a tap. Going to start to take the lid off. Okay, because we're coming up to 15 seconds. There goes the clock. Round to 15. And I start to pour the developer out. So we need to stop that chemical process now. So I'm going to stop the timer, reset it, and we pour in the stop bath. It's called stop bath. It's slightly alkaline, and it basically just stops that development process. And really, this doesn't need to be in here very long, less than a minute. I just pop it in, I give it 10 agitations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Give it a tap. I take the lid off. This we can use again. The stop bath we can use about 10 or more times, so it'll develop 10 different films. I pour that back into there. And now we're going to put the fixer in. So I stop the clock again, reset it, and the fixer has to be in there for 5 minutes. So we're going to start the clock. I'm pouring the fixer in. Now the fixer does exactly what it says. It's basically fixing the image. It's making a permanent image on that negative so that it will stay there. So just give it a tap. And we agitate again 4 times every minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, give it a tap, and there we go. And what we'll do is we'll come back when this has had its 5 minutes. So we're just coming up to the final 30 seconds of the fixer. I'm going to give it a final agitation in a moment, and then I'm going to pour the fixer back in here, because again, we can use the fixer several times. You can develop about 10 rolls of film with one mix of fixer. So we're just coming up to 5 minutes. Last few seconds, give it 4 agitations. 1, 2, 3, 4. Give it a tap. Open the lid, pour the fixer back into the container there. Now what you need to do is wash the film. Now what some people do is they pop it in the sink with the tap running and they leave it for 10 minutes. But that's a really wasteful way to just let water run out. So you don't have to do it that way. You can have yourself 2 litres of water, and you can in a sense wash it manually. So I can stop the clock now because this doesn't matter on the time, but I'm just pouring water in here. That's it. And what I'm going to do is put the lid on, and the first time you give it 20 agitations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Now all that's doing is it's just washing away any remaining chemicals that are there. Pour that down the sink. Then we do the same again. I pour some more water in. There we go, put the lid on, and this time I agitate it 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pour that away. Just going to top my jug up with a bit more water here. Just cold water. And the final one, just going to pour that in there like that. Final wash. And we're going to give that 5 agitations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it, the film is now washed, all the chemicals gone. Now, a little photographer's tip here is some people use a 4th stage, which is called a washing agent. And this is to stop drying marks appearing on the film, streaks of water. And you can buy the washing agent, but it's quite expensive. But a tip I learnt years ago, it's really only washing up liquid is washing agent. So all I do with the final bit of water is I'm just going to put literally a tiny drop of fairy liquid in there or any other washing up liquid. And that becomes my washing agent. And I'm just going to pour that in there like that. And this will mean that when you hang the film up to dry, it will dry evenly, you won't have any lines or streaks on the film. So I'm just going to give that 3 slow agitations. You don't want to shake it too much because it'll all froth up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now the most exciting bit, I'm going to put this in the sink, take the lid off. The film's all developed. I'm going to take the top off and my films are now in here. So let's have the moment of truth, as they say. So there we go. That was the film and it's all a bit soapy, but the magic has happened. I don't know if you can see that, but what we've got on that film now is a nice set of negatives. I can see all the pictures there. There we go. I don't know if you can see that with the window light shining through, but we've got a real nice set of negatives there. What I need to do is hang them up to dry, and I've got these special clips. You can just use clothes pegs if you want. I keep the soapy solution in there because I've got these squeezy things here that are just going to help me squeeze the film off. So I just give them a bit of a soaking there. You need to do this quite gently because you don't want to scratch the film until it's had time to dry. So I'm just doing that once, okay? And then I'll just do it once more. Again, do it quite gently, like so. And there we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my top clip on there like that. The weighted clip goes on the bottom here like this. And there we go. That is how you develop a black and white film. So I'm going to go and hang this up in the other room where there's no dust. And that will probably take a couple of hours to dry. And then eventually I can scan these into the computer. So maybe you might like to have a go at developing a black and white film with your parents someday. Hope you enjoyed that.